Good evening, everybody. We'll call the March 28th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Time is 6:01. Let the record show that we have full body here. Next item on the agenda is hearing of residents. Do we have anybody sign up? Tiffany? Okay, we had nobody sign up for that. Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on there. Minutes for the March 14th, 2018 regular meeting. Item B, PC 2016-017, consider and act upon a request for approval of final plat for Unit 3B of the Homestead subdivision, an approximately 16-acre tract of land generally located about 2,000 feet west of the intersection of IH-35 North and Schwab Road, Guadalupe County, Texas. Item C, PC 2016-018, consider and act upon a request for approval of a final plat for Unit 4 of the Homestead subdivision, an approximate 17-acre tract of land generally located about 2,000 feet west of the intersection of IH-35 North and Schwab Road, Guadalupe County, Texas. Commissioners, do we need to pull any of these items for individual consideration? All right, seeing none, looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Greenwald. Do I have a second?
Second. I second it.
Second by Commissioner Ray. All right, any other comments? All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next item is items for individual consideration. Commissioner Bacon? No, the next item is the item that we discussed.
Oh, okay. I'm going to recuse myself from
Okay, item 4A, PC 2017-057. Consider and act upon a request for approval of a preliminary plat for the Discount Tire TXS 11363 subdivision, an approximately 31-acre tract of land located at 17975 IH-35, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County. Emily.
Good evening, Commissioners. So the property is located at 17975 IH-35. So just to get your bearings, this is 3009 and 35. And then the subject property we're looking at is here. Most commonly, people know it as the old Garden Ridge Pottery property. So that is the site we're looking at. It is currently zoned general business and is used for commercial purposes. The applicant is proposing to preliminary plat into 3 separate lots. Lot 1 being 1.091 acres, Lot 2 being 20.653, and Lot 3 being 7.14. So I know it's a little difficult to see the lot lines on the screen, so I tried to make it a little easier on the next slide. So this is Lot 1, and then Lot 2 is here in blue, and then Lot 3 is shown in the red. The applicant has submitted a tree affidavit which indicates that the site does contain protected and heritage trees but will in no way cause the destruction or damage with the preliminary plat. The site is serviced by City of Schertz Water, CCMA, CenterPoint Energy, CPS, AT&T, and Spectrum. So Lot 1 and Lot 2, so once again Lot 1, Lot 2 both have frontage on IH-35 access road. And then Lot 3, so this lot here, has proposed access through a proposed master thoroughfare plan road. It's the extension of 4 Oaks Lane. So as you can see on this slide, this is 4 Oaks Lane, and you can actually see the master thoroughfare plan alignment there. So they are proposing to plat that right-of-way in this area here. It's 70 feet of pavement width and 70 feet of width and 42 feet of pavement. And it divides Lot 3 and Lot 2. The city engineer has reviewed and approved the preliminary drainage report. So Lot 1 and Lot 2 will have water and sewer through lines adjacent to 35, and then the proposed Lot 3 would have water and sewer availability through proposed lines within that Four Oaks Lane extension. Sidewalks will be required adjacent to I-35 for the entire frontage, along with both sides of the Four Oaks Lane extension, and those will be reviewed with the site plan with development of the lots. So the subject property is located off I-35, which is the TxDOT right-of-way. TxDOT has reviewed and approved the plat and has provided a no objection letter to access and drainage. Pursuant to the submitted TIA and TxDOT's review, they have requested that 4 out of the 8 driveways be closed. So I wanted to show which driveways those would actually be. They're designated on the plat exhibit by a circle 2, which you can see here, but it's these 4. So Lot 1 and Lot 2 would still have access to this driveway, this one, and this one. The proposed preliminary plat is consistent with applicable requirements, and staff is making a recommendation of approval, and there are representatives of the project here if there's any questions. And then if I can just make a quick reminder that if you have questions or want to make a comment, please make sure that your mic is on so we can all hear you.
Okay, commissioners.
Emily, can you help me understand the difference between, in looking at the proposed plat, the difference between closing the driveways and then he also shows the non-access easements? Can you help me understand those?
So the way that TxDOT explained the driveway closure designation is they wanted to make sure that on the preliminary plat it is memorialized that those are the exact locations that are going to be closed. Those are existing driveways that are no longer going to be there. They're going to have to be closed through TxDOT's standards. And then the 1-foot non-vehicular access easement is there essentially so there's not another driveway put in or anything like that. And then I apologize, something I should have mentioned. So at this time, the preliminary plat is truly in order to final plat Lot 1. There's no proposal at this time to final plat the other 2 lots. And we do have a site plan for Lot 1 to develop it commercially.
So the non-access easements are just there to ensure nobody puts a new driveway in, basically. All right, thank you.
Which they'd still have to go through the same process, go to TxDOT, obtain the permits and all that. Yeah.
One other question. What about right now we have, I don't want to call it a shortcut, but it's circulation back to Four Oaks Lane. Is that going to be cut off, or will we still have that access through the lots to access Four Oaks Lane?
I would assume so. I mean, so technically, I mean, there's still going to be the driveways. There's shared access between Lot 1 and Lot 2. But I would assume that kind of that same shortcut that functions today would still be there.
But there's nothing to keep anybody from putting a fence up if that's what they wanted to do.
Correct.
They're going to leave the existing buildings up there?
At this time, that is the current proposal. There's no proposed demolition of those buildings or anything. From what we know, they're going to remain as is.
They're aware Mr. White is dead, right?
Yes, sir.
He was buried today.
Yes, sir.
On our item summary, it says the subject property is zone GB, yet on the plat map, we've got GB and M1. You mentioned that this was the, initially, in ending to final plat Lot 1, but nothing else is going to change. We'll still have M1 and GB back there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions? All right, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve PC 2017-057 discount tire TXS 11363 subdivision preliminary plat as it was presented.
All right, you have a motion by Commissioner Breaux. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Greenwald. Any other comments or questions? All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye, motion carries 6-0.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, if you would notify Commissioner Bacon that we are completed with this item.
Hey, here.
All righty, that brings us to the next item on our agenda. Item 5, workshop discussion regarding the comprehensive land use plan and current zoning. This is an item that I asked Bryce to do some research for us, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards.
So, Commissioners, earlier before the meeting, I passed out to everybody a little packet. Inside of that packet, you're going to see 2 large format sheets that are our current future land use plan and current zoning map. And the current zoning map has got some, very small written in items and some colored circles on it that I just wanted to identify the differences between the existing zoning that throughout the city and whether it is in compliance or non-compliance with the future land use plan. And so to help a little bit out as well, I have taken some screenshots of that, compared them. So all of these slides on the left-hand side, you'll see current zoning, again with those colored items that I've then identified the land use characteristics on, and then the future land use plan for that same area on the right. So more or less what this will be is just a explanation of kind of where we're at, what the comprehensive land use plan calls for. I've also provided you an excerpt out of the Schertz sector plan, which is the comprehensive plan amendment that was passed in July of 2013 for all of the land use designations for North and then South Schertz. They're all included in there. So as we're kind of talking about this, one thing to keep in mind is some of these have very close to direct zoning references between the future land use characteristic and the current zoning district. Some of them are more abstract and allow for a number of different uses and potentially a number of different zoning districts. We'll kind of talk through a little bit as we go, and then I'll give the presentation, let y'all kind of have the discussion. I'm sure Mr. Dahl will kind of lead us off there. So the first area, and I work north to south, we've got up here in the, and I'll kind of give you some references. This here is I-35. This is Eckert Road, the existing Cypress Point development, the Parklands development that they are just have finished up Unit 1 on. And so one of the items that we have is that this entire area here is identified as the agricultural conservation, which y'all may remember is that larger lot, rural land use character that's identified in the comprehensive plan. It's typically 5 acres and greater for residential lots. And then on the rural frontage areas, they allow for certain commercial land uses. A lot of this is synonymous with the agricultural district. The other thing that I gave you is our permitted uses table, which is the matrix that shows what uses are permitted in each zoning district. So a lot of this is still under delayed annexation agreements, not within the city yet, but we do have a planned development district that has single-family lots that are not 5-acre lots that are in that area. The next area that we have in northern Schertz, and I'll kind of bound you here, this is Schwab Road right here. So this is the David Lax extension. This is 35. This is the intersection of 2252 and 482. And then Hubertus Road is right here, which is the extension of 1103. And so there's two items that we have here. The first one is there's a lot of M1 within this red area. This, as you can see on our other side, which is bounded right in here, is the highway commercial at the hard corners of the overpass intersections, which is predominantly retail and large format commercial. And then, and then the commercial campus, which is the mid-block portions, which is suitable for a number of uses, including office, retail, office warehousing, some light manufacturing potentially, in a very campus-like setting. So not traditional big industrial buildings, but more of that kind of designer nice items. You'll see there's some pictures in that section that open that up for you. Additionally, within this green area that we have a lot of M1 zoning on currently, it's identified as agricultural conservation. So again, that 5-acre large lot with the rural commercial frontage. There's some other items where there's some remaining residential agriculture zoning, as well as some public use where there's some schools that are up here. As we go even further south on I-35, again, 2252 and 35 intersection is here. The dark blue is 3009 coming down to 35. What we do have is both the agricultural conservation up here in this M1 section on the city limits, and then our transit-oriented development and mixed-use neighborhood, as you can see here in the purple. That's kind of centered in this area. To give you an idea of where we're at, this little cul-de-sac and little arm here is Pipestone and Red Iron that comes off of 3009, and this is the manufactured home park and RV park, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head, that's located off of 35. It's got the long driveway. There's a mini storage and a U-Haul rental place right in front of it. You've got a long driveway and it opens up into the back. Yes, I think that's right, Stone Creek. And then further to the south, we have what should be single-family residential land use character. That's M1. As the commission may remember, we did run a comprehensive plan amendment to the future land use plan for this area in the fall, late summer, fall of last year, to change it to single-family. It used to be industrial and industrial research, where we have basically Belmont and Riata neighborhoods. So that has been changed. I will comment on this one real quick, that the bulk of this, basically this lot here, is owned by the school district, and it is one of their school sites. So don't know, there's a lot of concern on compatibility issues there. Next, as we move into Central Schertz, this area, this is Maskey Road. So the soccer complexes are here. It is identified on the future land use plan as single-family residential. This may be one, as the commission talks about, of instead of talking about possibly changing the zoning, in this case, maybe possibly changing the comprehensive plan. So the central section of Schertz, the comprehensive plan, which will be basically just south of kind of the commercial areas on 35, bounded by 3009, Church Parkway, south to 78. I'll go back a little bit, kind of point it out to everybody. So basically this area of Schertz is what we refer to as Central Schertz. The comprehensive plan has not been updated on that since 2002. So again, we just have some commercial. It is within, please note that it is within APZ2, which is our accident potential zone 2 from the Randolph study. Next in Central Schertz, this is at the intersection of 3009 and FM 78, where the AOK mini storage is. There's a number of undeveloped lots. This is the old landfill site. It's a bunch of commercially zoned property. It is identified on the future land use plan as parks and open space. Going into Southern Schertz, we have FM 1518 running through here. The dark purple down here is Sedona and the first part of Crossvine. We also have Willow Grove here in the red, and then in this purple here is Ryan Valley subdivision, and the dark purple spot is Corbett Middle School. Ray Corbett Drive is located here, Lower Seguin, and 1518 is at this intersection here. And what we're looking at is this is the area that's identified as the mixed-use core and mixed-use neighborhood, which more or less the mixed-use core is a kind of a town center-y commercial location for Southern Schertz. It includes some multifamily retail. It is intended and designed to be a very urbanized suburban development in a walkable, more dense community. And then we also have, of course, the supporting neighborhood around it, which is a mixture of housing types, but again is trying to incorporate elements of walkable, which typically means density or a little bit higher densities, things like that as we move forward. In the Unified Development Code, we actually have a specific mixed-use plan development district that's a proposal to cover this area, and it covers both the mixed-use core, the mixed-use neighborhood, and kind of a figurative transition zone between those that really lays it out. It's about 20 pages long. Next, moving even further south, I-10 is along the bottom of the page here. Again, we're looking at 1518 right here along this yellow border, and this is Lower Seguin Road. And so what we're looking at is the green is the agricultural conservation that you can see, a lot of the 5-acre lots, and then the yellow is a state neighborhood. I put this one on there while we do have a lot of land that is not within the city currently. It's under delayed annexation agreements. We do have sections that are within the city that are identified and zoned currently as pre-development. Moving to the west, what we have here is, this is the western runway of Randolph Air Force Base. So we're looking at Ware Seguin Road right here. This is where the bins are in it. Laura Heights subdivision, the Reserve 2. And so this area in between the runways, so you can see identified in green here, is identified as agricultural conservation. It's currently zoned as RA. And then as you get further south, closer to 1604, I-10 again here, this is the edge of 1604 coming up. This area is identified as a state neighborhood. It's currently zoned general business and light manufacturing. As you can also see from the future land use plan, there is also heavy floodplain through that area. So with that, I'll happy to click through slides for y'all and answer any questions and let y'all come.
Okay. If you could take it back to the slide that has 482 on it.
Sure.
Okay. So I didn't really have a whole lot planned on what to say tonight, so I'm kind of winging this because I really didn't want to come into this with any preconceived notions as to how the rest of the commission feels. But, you know, a number of years ago, we went through the Gateway Plan where we formulated our current future land use plan. We spent a couple years on that, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money. And I thought it was a fantastic plan for the future of our city and where we wanted to be when we grew up to be what we're going to be when our city's fully built out. And looking at the zoning map, you know, you see that there's some disconnects between that land use plan and you know, what the current zoning is. And, you know, with the zoning being not in compliance with what the future land use plan says we would like to have, I feel that we're setting ourselves up for the potential of having something come in that we may not necessarily want in that area. And the question is, you know, as a commission, you know, do we want to take on the task and the challenge of asking council and beginning the process to look at either modifying the zoning to match the land use plan, or to, you know, maybe look at our future land use plan and maybe modifying it to be a little bit more compliant with the zoning and make some modifications. It's a big project. It certainly is going to require a lot of political will on the part of council. But at the end of the day, you know, in my opinion, I think it's the right thing to do for the future of the city, so that we do get what we want, where we want, and that we don't get ourselves in a position to where we have a project coming in with some sort of development, especially in this area here with the M1, that is not necessarily compatible with the current vision that we've outlaid for the city. So I'd like to hear some initial reactions from you guys.
I agree. I think we need to figure out what we want and then zone it properly so we're not chasing people later.
Thing I would caution you about looking at properties is when we look at them, the first question we have to ask, especially in this area, is whether it lies in the floodplain or not. Because a whole lot of this property that abuts the railroad tracks or lies within or between the railroad tracks is in the floodplain. Therefore, what you can do with that property is grossly limited. In other words, we're not going to allow subdivisions to go in there. So we have to remember things like that as we go to develop this, because there is so much floodplain up in this general vicinity. I do not remember, however, and that we meant for this much of that property when it was, all the things were rezoned. I do not remember that we meant for it to all go M1 either. I just don't remember that.
It was designated M1 many, many moons ago, back when I was still on the council.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how long ago it's been.
And that was in response, or at least my version of it, that I've been told, and hopefully you guys can set the record straight because you guys were here and involved in it, is that a lot of that was changed to M1 in response to potential sexually oriented businesses wanting to come in, and that this was put into place as a way to hinder that effort.
That was primarily one of the ways of stopping it. At the time, San Antonio was going haywire with it. We didn't want any of it.
Understood. I don't think we want any of it today either.
Still don't.
Yeah.
That was the way we had of putting a stop to it.
Mm-hmm. And the question now is going forward, is this still the right thing to do?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of concerns, primarily with what we're looking at in northern Schertz. Right off the bat, the thing that reaches out and kind of hits me in the face is, where's our next industrial park? Schertz has been very successful, and we seem to be a very popular place as you watch all the construction going on up in Mesa Verde, up there by Amazon. We're getting new structures built. Door Lane is developing. And when I look at the future land use plan, I don't see any room up there. We've colored it all green. One of the things I remember long ago that we used to, the way we described Schertz was the industrial and heavy retail was north of 35 and south of 35 was residential. And what I see looking at our future land use plan is we want to turn everything that isn't already industrial into residential. I assume that's what the agricultural conservation ends up being. And you know, given now that the Trayton Park up there on Lookout and Schertz Parkway has started to spread over into Selma, and Selma is finally improving Lookout back, be all the way back to 1604. We now have a lot of competition, I think, for some of this industrial space. And of course, it's the other part of me says I think we may have missed the boat on this one when, I'm aware of two. I'm not sure what zoning it would be, but I'm aware of at least two construction projects on 482 that I would call industrial. So part of me is saying, are we really looking out for the economic future of the city by favoring the land use plan over the zoning? And the other question is, has that ship already sailed?
It's a good question. You know, the land use plan is you know what we came up with, and that was a number of years ago. It may not be the right thing to do in its entirety today. And again, you know, part of this is to spark and begin this discussion, and to see where we feel and gather some opinions, and to see, you know, where we can come up with the consensus on a direction that we might want to approach this, and whether we want to adapt the zoning to the land use plan or vice versa, or come up with something a little bit different that, you know, meets the needs of the residents, would keep undesirable potential projects from coming in, and in your case, and to address your concern, to also provide an area for the future economic growth. I agree with you that the park over there is pretty much built out, and they're going to need some other place to go, and that certainly is something that needs to be thrown into this discussion if we're going to have this discussion.
And it's certainly possible that looking again at this current zoning versus the future land plan, that not all of that's currently gray has to stay gray. There may be, you know, with a little more involvement, maybe from economic development or somebody, maybe all of that isn't necessary to reserve for industrial.
And I would also suggest that maybe having that all M1 might not be the right answer either. Maybe some M2, you know, maybe even some industrial, depending on what it is. Again, but it's something that, in my opinion, I think it's a discussion worth having, and to approach council and to see where their feeling is on it. Because as a body, you know, our ability is only to make recommendations to council, and they're going to make the final decision as to zoning changes. But I believe council gives a lot of weight to what comes from planning and zoning, and they certainly would not take any recommendations for changes from this body lightly, and it would go through some serious consideration. But at the end of the day, all we would be doing is making that recommendation and letting them decide.
And again, when you look south, when you look down along Interstate 10, we're doing the same thing down there where I get the bright red. I understand what that is. What kinds of things go in the commercial campus, the lighter red along the interstates?
Sure. So commercial campus, and there's a little bit different definition for both of them. So I'll read you the Southern Schertz one first. The commercial campus land use character area is intended to encourage the development of lower intensity commercial and office uses in locations between major intersections as a buffer between the interstate highway and adjoining neighborhoods. Given significant linear frontage along IH-10 and South Schertz, there are several opportunities to accommodate low-impact campus development that takes advantage of the highway frontage and any major environmental assets, such as creeks, floodplains, steep grades, and significant tree cover, as an aesthetic amenity to the site. This category could also accommodate light manufacturing or flex office uses set in a campus-like environment, in addition to multifamily residential located at mid-block locations and as a transition between office light industrial uses and adjoining single-family residential uses. It goes a little bit into some of the land-defining characters elements as well, which the land use mix is mostly office, research, flex office and supporting uses, light industrial and assembly uses, education, and other institutional uses. This category may also include some multifamily uses at mid-block locations as a buffer between the highway and single-family neighborhoods only. And generally, multifamily should only be considered in locations that may not be ideally suited for retail, office, or light industrial uses, such as mid-block locations or behind major commercial uses and sites with environmental constraints.
It sounds to me then like a Caterpillar or an Amazon wouldn't fit that definition.
Typically, those are the larger ones are going to be more of our straight industrial areas, which we have again mostly in northern Schertz. There are areas along both sides of 2252 after it splits off from 482, again going north towards Garden Ridge, and then all along Schwab on both sides is identified as that true industrial area. I think typically when, at least staff, as we've kind of talked about it, when we think of that kind of campus-like environment, there's some photos that are shown here. Let me pull those up, and that may help a little bit. It's going to be a little bit smaller. We're not going to get 500,000 square foot buildings. It's closer to 10 to 50,000 square foot buildings typically. Again, nice front-facing facades, but still have that very industrial use to them. I'm sorry, give me just a moment. I got the photo.
While you're looking for that, I can speak to part of what went on down there in terms of looking at the red, and also if you go to your old zoning map, the M1, okay? We were looking to capture part of what's happening on IH-10 coming out of San Antonio. For the last 10 years, that business coming out of San Antonio, due to NAFTA, has moved steadily in our direction. It has now not only moved steadily in our direction, it is almost past us with buildings that are being built on the opposite side of IH-10, so that it's not currently within Schertz's city limits or ETJ, but it's going to move. It's continuing to move. If you look at the number of trucking companies that have been built between 1604 and 410, you will find that all the ground that was open on the south side of 10 is now platted and mostly spoken for. It's already owned. It's not up for sale anymore. So what our original goal was trying to find a place for some of that growth in our city with that M1 and commercial. It hasn't happened because we don't have anything down there to support it. Okay? And none of the developers have looked at it from the standpoint of lack of water, lack of sewer, and all those things. Yeah.
It's always been, or for quite a while now, it's always been my personal opinion that what's stifling growth in the city of Schertz along Interstate 10 is sewer service. We've got great, we've got city water down there, and we're getting ready to add fire protection down in that part of the city, but we still don't have the wastewater infrastructure. This is another area, Mr. Chairman, where I think maybe there's a little give and take here. I would certainly like to see some retail development down there to support the Southern Schertz community so they don't have to drive all the way back up to 35. But on the same hand, realistically, when you look at what's being built along Interstate 10 coming out of San Antonio, as Mr. Evans said, it's primarily trucking business, it's supporting the trucking industry or other commercial industrial, not retail. And again, for me to sit on my side of the highway and watch the other side develop, I just don't know. But this may be another area where we can take a look, and maybe we can come up with some kind of mixture of uses down there that might serve both purposes. And of course, I know Mr. James is working that Southern Schertz, that whole Randolph J-Lewis thing down there. I don't know if that might be part of a solution or not. But maybe we could go back a little bit further off the interstate with some kind of commercial industrial type development. But it might be worth looking at.
Mr. James, any comments?
I don't necessarily disagree with the fact that it makes sense to periodically take a look at the comp plan and with regard to the future land use plan. I will kind of say I think that that's a fairly significant effort. there's a lot that sort of goes into that, even with regard to the comments, and I can appreciate them of are we losing the industrial. We have a substantial amount of industrial land still up there and still available. Now, is it enough? Is it too much? Is it in the right spot? Those are all questions. I think that's a valid thing. I think even the idea of do we need to go through and amend zoning to conform with the comp plan? Again, I think it's a valid proposition. The question is it worth? How great is our concern that things are going to develop contrary to the comp plan versus the way it's going, it as it comes in, they'll want to rezone to that effectively, and we kind of get there. I think for me, though, the overriding factor is, staff presently is trying to go through the UDC and update the entire UDC, and they've started and they're chipping away, and you've seen them kind of come through with stuff over time. The real issue for me is, do you want them to pull off that effort to tackle this, because that's what would have to happen, or is the answer, let's keep working on the UDC, and then frankly at that time, it probably makes sense, let's go back and revisit the comp plan, it probably warrants it, and as part of that revisiting of the comp plan, let's have a discussion about, do we want to do city-initiated rezone? So if you're asking my opinion, I think we have a greater impact on the community to keep working through the UDC amendments and then come around to this right now. And that's not saying I'm right, certainly, but that's kind of my thought is, given staff time limitations, I think we gain more at the community with continuing to knock out the UDC stuff. Again, if you want, I'd ask Lisa and Bryce the same question.
Well, I mean, the feeling that I had with our conversations with Bryce is that in terms of city-initiated rezoning, I think Bryce would rather have a root canal without anesthetic than
yeah, it's a
difficult
bit of a
process.
Pick and choose your battle. How
Yeah.
much how much political capital do you want to give up? You may recall that Bryce came back 6 months or so ago with what seemed to be kind of no-brainer comp plan amendments, and we spent a lot of time dealing with people who weren't. And so that was one where it all kind of goes, seems an obvious thing, let alone some that may not be, particularly down south where you've got people opposed to development at all and things like that.
Most of the development, or the development that came in along 3009, 35 interchange, was compliments of San Antonio. Even though it's in our city, they proposed the land use and changed the from neighborhood service to manufacturing district without our permission, but we found out about it and let them go ahead and do it. Didn't cost us a dime, but it was changed, and it's been working great ever since. The other end of the city, until we get sewer out here, all you're going to see is small trucking outfits, anything that can be used with a septic tank. The city has got plans to put a sewer plant in, trying to get sewer mains developed, which I don't know how they're going to do it or when, but I know they've got to do it. But once that develops, the minute that plant takes the first drop of water, it's going to be Katie bar the door. Land's going to explode. I saw it on 35. I guarantee I'm going to see it again. And then I'll retire.
Commissioner Bro?
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Greenwald said, rather than when the first water comes out of the plant, I think once the permitting is approved by the city and a construction time plan is published by CCMA, that's when you're going to see this place start to balloon. But I think companies can build and develop out there in time to be finished when the sewer lines come finished. So I don't think it's going to be that far out. And construction of the plant is going to take about 12 months. So as soon as it can be approved and platted and the bids go out, we're looking at a 12-month time frame for construction. So I think it'll happen sooner than that as far as development. Back on the north side, if I remember when Gateway was here and Gateway was doing all their discussions, I believe there was a comment made from one of the Gateway people that there was enough industrial area platted or zoned on the north side of 35 to last us almost to eternity. And I don't know if that's still effective or still accurate. I don't know. But if that's a true statement, then there's no reason why we shouldn't have a bunch of green space out there on 35. If there's enough industrial space to last us forever, why would we want that much? So if that's still an accurate statement, my suggestion would be we don't need all that gray space up there. If that's not an accurate statement, then maybe we need to leave it the way it is. So it's a hard question. It's even harder to answer that question with some accurate information on how we can predict the future of what's going to happen on the north end of town. But I think that'll. I mean, there's for sale signs from here to New Braunfels on 35. So somebody's planning something. I don't know it on the dais up here. I don't know if anybody knows what's being planned up there, but there's a lot of stuff going on. Is it going to fit our land use or fit our zoning? I don't know. It's hard. But then again, the development and the hustle and bustle on I-10 is only months away. So if we're going to be changing any zoning or land use, or if we're going to start incorporating more areas of the city, we probably should get busy on that. Thank you.
Commissioner Bacon?
Enough background. Sorry, I don't have enough background. I'm so new to all of this.
Okay, it's fair. It's you got to learn by asking questions. I just want to make sure you're not feeling like you can't ask a question or anything. Just, we're happy to help you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have another question just to make sure I understand what I'm looking at here. When I look at the current zoning map that you gave us and those squiggly areas, those are the ones that you think are the current zoning is not in accordance with the comp plan?
Correct. So those are the areas that staff has looked at when we compared both of these documents. I mean, there's some smaller areas that are little 1 and 2 spot issues kind of throughout the city that aren't really worth kind of us looking at because they're already developed or things like that. These were the kind of just general broad stroke areas that staff looked at and said, this zoning is not in compliance or in support of the comprehensive plan. Whether it's just pre-development and delayed annexation agreements, which I believe that all of the delayed annexation agreements will expire or most of the ones in Southern Church expire in 2020, is when they're generally 10-year agreements, and they were executed in 2010. So.
I guess, go ahead.
Another question regarding the north of 35. Are we going to still plan, assuming that a light rail is going to come up there and create a city center for us? Or because if we're going to still think that light rail is coming, that's going to have a big effect on what we do up there. If we give up on light rail, we're free to redesign whatever we want to do up there.
So recently, the Lone Star Rail push has kind of gone kaput. I don't know if you want to add anything else in on that.
Yeah, there's a new effort looking to kind of fund underway to start re-looking at an alternative route. I mean, the question for you guys is, in light of where it stands, do you want to go a different direction? And again, that may prove wise and that it never happens here, or you may go a different direction. The plan would have been to have it come through here, and you've missed the window of you've missed an opportunity. Y'all's call however you want to go. But yeah, there is an effort to relook at it. A connection, sort of. It's a couple of steps back, broad look. So we'll see what happens.
I mean, I think the plan that's on the books right now that Gateway did for us up there with a new city center and a train stop and all that, that's fantastic. It would be fantastic if that were to take place. But if there's no hope of ever getting a light rail system up there with a train stop and a new city center, then why pursue it? So again, there's no definite answers. That's another hard one to work on. But if we're not going to get it, we need to go another direction.
If only we had that crystal ball. And again, the problem is you don't really know what's coming, and you try to plan. And I don't know how many times I've heard Mayor Carpenter talk about how the development, what's going on in Schertz today, the stage for that development was set 20, 30 years ago. And so no pressure, guys, but that's kind of what's going on here. We're trying to forecast what the city's going to look like in the future, and leave it for our successors to give them, hopefully leave them what they need in the future. It's tough, I guess we just do the best we can. And I understand your comment, Mr. James, about how busy staff is, but again, my concern is we just don't really know what's going to happen. And again, when I was commenting about the manufacturing, M1 and GB, or I guess it's almost all M1 up there in northern Schertz, I think what's helping us right now is there's no access to a lot of that property. They sit off kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's not but all it takes is one guy to come in and he's decided he's going to build an access road, and he's going to put a 500,000 square foot warehouse right smack in the middle of that. And we might as well give up on the the agriculture conservation.
Well, likely, with all due respect, likely if somebody's going to build a 500,000 square foot warehouse, they're coming to the city for incentive. The city's going to look at it and go, it's not in the plan, I'm not helping you. And the reality is we have not really had folks open up a new industrial park in how many decades? I think that's a legitimate issue we need to look at. I guess maybe where I would sort of disagree with kind of what I'm hearing a little bit is if you look at that sort of stuff, it generally involves some city/EDC participation to direct it, guide it. Even if you look at the industrial that's occurring on the opposite side of 35, that's got a fair amount of county direction to it to make that happen. And frankly, I think a lot of the stuff you're seeing off the frontage road, maybe next time you drive past, look at it and go, is that really what we're after? Or are we looking for the large-scale industrial that's a bit back the county's going to help drive? And again, part of the issue it's going is it's in the county, not in a city, and so it's the tax ramifications thereof. So again, there's some competitive issues we're going to have on 10 that are different than we've got when we're looking at the areas off 35.
Well, in my memory, of course, when I moved here, the only industrial park would be Tri-County. And in the last few years, and I couldn't guess how far back, maybe 10 years, we've seen the whole mid cities. I can't remember what that's called. Something Verde.
The Verde Enterprise.
And then in the back is Titan. So not to be argumentative, but I think we have seen new industrial parks, and I would argue that part of the reason we're not seeing more is that it wasn't needed. Okay, and I'm not arguing really for or against. Where I'm trying to come from is we need to decide, part of the process has to be, do we want to go ahead and now in the future limit development like that in order to get the other kind? Are we as a city, we as a group, are we willing to give up? And again, it's just as an example, okay? But are we willing in 10 or 20 years, are we willing to give up another Amazon type distribution warehouse because we'd rather have 5-acre residential properties? That's kind of where I'm coming from. And Commissioner Broad's comments about if it is in fact that we have plenty of industrial space, then I'm okay with that. All I'm suggesting is that we need to make a very conscious decision about what we're doing and understand the future ramifications of those decisions. That's really where I'm coming from tonight.
I will say that I think that it's extremely important at this point to exercise that foresight. In speaking with somebody in real estate in downtown San Antonio recently, I was asking them about what they thought of Schertz, and they said that Schertz looks like just about every other bedroom community of San Antonio. And that really struck me, and I think that it's about finding that balance and the proper and appropriate placements for our industrial parks as well as our residential. And I will admit that I have not studied the UDC yet, and I apologize for that, but I am really excited to do that, and I do absolutely think that it's time to start addressing how we deal with the growth. And I mean, in looking at some of these site plans, we are facing a point of being limited in the decisions that we make about the future of the community.
It's well said. I mean, we had a couple of years ago, we had the affordable housing apartment complex that wanted to come in on 35. They were willing to install, 1,300 feet of sewer main in order to access the nearest sewer line. And it would have opened up every one of those properties in between that connection point and their complex to development. And it would have been great for the I-35 frontage. If we find somebody that was willing to do that out here in this northern area, we could have the same situation arise where, you run 2,000 feet of pipe to be able to hook up to a sewer line. Every piece of property in between you and that connection is now open and ready for development. And it can, again, create some undesirable results and some undesirable consequences. As Bryce and I talked about this over the last few weeks that we've had a chance to talk about it, one of the options that Bryce presented that is a way to kind of be, an interim stopgap to pay attention to what's going on there and to give us time to think about it, is to simply adopt a policy to where we will no longer grant sewer waivers for commercial development up in this area. We have the ability to do that, correct? And so, that might be something for us to look at and also discuss as a body if we want to formally adopt that type of policy, which, may be a way forward, which would give staff some time to complete their UDC amendments and give us 6 months or so, and then we could start focusing on this project here. And in the meantime, we're also paying attention to what's happening out there. Any other comments? All right, great. Well, I thank everybody for the conversation. I think everybody is concerned and aware of paying attention to where we're going as a city and what our future entails. This isn't going to be the last time we're going to have this type of discussion, but I feel as a body the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is probably one of the most important roles that we have, is to guide and plan for the future of the city. And I appreciate everybody having that level of concern and being that willing to have a discussion like this. All right, and with that, we'll move on to the next item then. Requests and announcements. Requests by commissioners to place items on a future planning and zoning agenda. Okay, I just put one little thing on there for our next meeting, since it came up several times. The sewer project in Southern Schertz, if we could get a brief update as to projected timelines on that. And then announcements by commissioners, city and community events attended, to be attended, continuing education events attended and to be attended. Anybody?
Yeah, got a comment on the upcoming Main Street meeting, whatever we're calling that.
The charrette?
If any of you have access to your HOA Facebook pages or any other HOA communications, you might put that in there so we can get more attendance and more interest maybe.
Announcements by staff?
Good evening, Commissioners. Since the last P&Z meeting 2 weeks ago, we received one site plan application, and the site is located off of IH 35 Frontage Road, east of Focal Point Vision that was recently constructed. You may recall at the last P&Z meeting, I had mentioned that we received a site plan application for the site off of, immediately adjacent to Focal Point Vision. And since then, we received the adjacent site, Lot 8, Block 10, and the proposal is for a 5,772 square foot medical office building. That is all. Thank you.
All right, does anybody have anything else?
I just have a reminder that I sent out an email about the 2018 Planning and Zoning Workshop that's on April 20th. If you want me to sign you up for that, I will be glad to do that, and I'll send the email of all the information for that. So just let me know, and I just need to know that by April the 11th. Thank you.
All right, and with that, meeting is adjourned at 7:04.